I am so excited for this segment. I really want you to pay attention. Back in 2016, Donald Trump won the election with 77% of a group you might not expect, the white evangelical Protestant vote. After 4 years in office, that number grew. In 2020, he won 84% of their vote. My next guest was raised Christian and is the son of an evangelical pastor who spent years trying to figure out why and how the evangelical movement got where we are today. I'm thrilled to welcome Tim Alberta, my friend and staff writer for The Atlantic. His new book, a must-read, The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory, American Evangelicals in the Age of Extremism. It is out tomorrow. I want to say thank you for writing this book. Congratulations. This is hard and deeply personal. Tell our viewers what got you started writing this book, because you went home to mourn and eulogize your father.
Yeah, that's right. So my dad was a pastor, and I grew up in the church. The church was my home, and you know, I've walked with Jesus since I was a little boy, for as long as I can remember, and I still do. And when my dad died, I went home for the funeral, and it just so happens that he died right after my first book had come out, which was pretty harsh, pretty critical of Donald Trump. And when I got home for the viewing at the church, I had people confronting me and wanting to argue about politics.
Church.
Yeah, Dad's in a box, and we're in church, in the sanctuary. Sanctuary means set apart. Just fun linguistics, but like, yeah, church sanctuary, set apart for the purposes of being together as a community of believers. So then and there, yeah, people wanted to talk politics. Didn't want to just talk politics, wanted to argue politics, wanted to argue Trump. And then the next day, when I issued a bit of a rebuke, because I was so bothered by that, when I delivered the eulogy a day later at his funeral, then things got even a little bit worse. I was handed a note from an elder in the church, somebody who I'd known since I was a little kid, basically telling me that I should be ashamed of myself, that I was a part of the deep state, that I was undermining God's ordained leader of this country, Donald Trump. And there are moments in life when a problem that has been sort of an abstraction, something that you know is not quite right, but you just don't have the time or the energy or the inclination to really address it, suddenly it becomes real, and it becomes urgent and almost threatening in a way, and this was that moment for me.
But what was it about Donald Trump, right? When you think back to the evangelical church, what they care about, their values, right? There is no alignment with Donald Trump, the man, except, of course, he said, let's get rid of abortion. Was that it?
I think it was a few things. I think abortion is, in many ways, the entry point. I think it's almost fair to characterize it as a gateway drug for many evangelicals. What I mean by that is that if you are a church-going evangelical Christian and you are taught, if you are discipled in the church to realize that partisan politics are not the end-all be-all, that that is ultimately not the arena where you are called to invest all of your passions, but abortion, for many of these folks, is not a political issue. It is an ethical issue. It is a moral issue. It is a spiritual issue. So they sort of, you know, they create a permission structure to invest in that issue of abortion. But suddenly, Stephanie, when you invest so heavily in that issue of abortion, then the red team becomes your allies, the blue team becomes your enemies. And then suddenly all of these other proxy wars that pop up over all kinds of other policy issues, they become not R versus D, red versus blue, it becomes good versus evil. And if you start assigning that to other partisan disputes, and this guy, Donald Trump, who shares none of your values, but he's willing to go to war for you. He's willing to fight for you. In fact, I would even say he's willing to fight for you in ways that no good Christian ever would. Right? Remember when George W. Bush said that in order to save the free market, he first had to jettison free market principles?
Yes, I remember.
There's something to that idea here where for some Christians, they came to believe that to protect Christian virtue in this country, the first step was to jettison Christian virtue and embrace this guy, Donald Trump.
Okay, but there's a line in the book that took me. One pastor told you that more of his parishioners could recite the Second Amendment than the Second Commandment. He said that the problem with many evangelicals is that they now worship America. What?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what it means. You've heard the term bandied about Christian nationalism, right? And different people have different definitions, interpretations. I think it's very much worth understanding that there are millions and millions and millions of people in this country who truly do believe, deep down in their bones, that America is not just another nation, that America is a covenant nation, that it is a nation that it is in special relationship with God, and that therefore fighting for America is fighting for God. Now, that is blatantly anti-biblical. It is, I cannot emphasize just how bad the theology behind that thinking is, because in fact, we as Christians are told again and again and again, Old Testament, New Testament, that our kingdom, our citizenship is in heaven. And Jesus, when he talks about the kingdom of heaven, he describes it as a very real place, a physical place. It is not an abstraction. It is the place to which we are ultimately called to belong. And so this idea that we can merge these two kingdoms into one, it is not only wrong, but it is dangerous, because as we saw on January 6th, and as we may very well see again in the not so distant future, people who assign these sort of apocalyptic, existential, eternal stakes to these earthly political disputes, it doesn't end well.
How much of this movement in terms of evangelical Christians is rooted in fear, and that this country is changing, the face of this country, the politics of the people, right? There are a lot less white evangelical people in power today than there are 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Listen, I think fear is the one word that in many ways best encapsulates the entire, not only the relationship between these folks with Trump, but the relationship between these folks and their country. To your point, if you go back and look at the statistics, the demographics 30 years ago, this was a country that was 90% plus white. It was a country that was 90% plus church-going Christians every Sunday, probably 95% plus people who said that they believed in a higher power, all of that. Those statistics have obviously been on a sharp downward trajectory ever since. And so, of course, we can't decouple the idea of this fear and this resentment and this grievance that we see in quarters of the evangelical church from that changing face of America, a country that is far more secular, a country that is far less white. And really also, I think, if you consider where we are today in terms of the culture wars, we had this hand-wringing and this, the end is near, the barbarians are at the gates talk decades ago, when white evangelicals were in a much better place, a much more secure place culturally in terms of the laws on everything from abortion to same-sex marriage to, drug legalization, all of it, right? So if you consider the fact that the culture wars have swung so sharply against them, and that the country is changing so dramatically in such a short period of time, you start to understand why there is this fear, this anxiety. But again, I would just stress, Stephanie, for the Christian, for the Bible-believing Christian, theologically, the most oft-cited command in all of Scripture, fear not. Jesus, again and again, rebukes his disciples. Peter comes walking on the water, and then as soon as he turns and sees the storm, he starts to sink, he starts to drown, and Jesus grabs his hand and says, "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" Right? This fear that we're talking about, it cannot infect the Christian psyche the way that it is now. It's just so unhealthy, and ultimately it damages the credibility of our witness to the outside world.